if you have tuned into any of our other shows, you see that we normally bring on one guest, but today we have 4 amazing wedding planners for you today. And we know that so many of you are struggling right now to figure out what you're going to do, to figure out, how to sort through this mess. And maybe you have a date where you feel like you might need to reschedule because of coronavirus. And so this is really a show that's all about answering your questions. And so that's why we're excited to be doing this today. We're going to do some introductions first. Again, my name is Jordan Bunch, and I'm the owner of Ladybird Studios. We are a photography and filmmaking studio. And right now, another thing that we do that's pretty relevant is our live streaming services for people who can't have all the guests that they wanted to at their wedding, to be able to live stream it to them. But this show is not about that. This show is about these wedding planners and the questions that they are going to be able to answer for us today. I also am a member of the Associated Wedding Planners of Austin. Excuse me, I'm not a member. I'm a preferred vendor. So I'm not a planner, but I'm a preferred vendor of the Associated Wedding Planners of Austin. And the rest of the people on this call are members. So they're planners of this group. And I'm going to kick it over to Ashley, who's going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Voda, owner of Mrs. Planner. We operate out of Dallas and Austin and Destination, Colorado. I have about 5 on my team. I am current vice president of APA. And to kind of just share our mission statement with you, to give you a little bit more insight about what APA is and why it is we came together, I would say, number one, community of planners. But Associated Wedding Planners of Austin is a community of professional wedding planners who are committed to modeling exemplary standards and ethics, fostering relationships within the local wedding industry, and developing better business practices through continuing education in this ever-changing industry. And we'll hear about more of that today.
Alrighty. Hi, I'm Cassie Crudo. I own Bride's Best Friend. We have myself and one other planner on our team, and specialize in offbeat events, if you can't tell by the hair. And I am marketing chair for APA, and so excited to be a part of this group.
Hey, you guys, I am Abby Hillis, and I own ACH Events, and I have someone helping me apparently today. Sorry, guys. And I have myself and one other planner on my team. I operate mostly out of Austin, but I do weddings all over Texas and destination to Mexico. And I am a member of APA.
Hi, guys. I'm Ashley Moody with Ashley Nicole Affair. We are in Denver, Colorado, and Austin, and our Austin team. There's about 8 to 10 of us. And I am a member of APA, but I am also an admin on Bride to Bride. So it's good to be able to see people's faces. And if people, can put a name to my face, and I'm glad to be here.
All right. So like Jordan said, our goal today is kind of answering some of those hard to ask questions. We know that not everybody in the group has a planner, or maybe your planner package hasn't started yet if you have kind of a coordination package that starts a little bit later. So we're here to kind of help fill that void and answer some of those kind of hot questions that we know are just kind of burning for you. We did ask for a few questions in advance, and so we're going to kind of start there, and then we'll start with some of the other ones kind of pouring in from the live. So first question was not really a question, just overwhelmed. We postponed to Labor Day weekend, and we are worried we will have to postpone again. We're looking for general advice and best practices. Most of our vendors are paid, and we'd be losing a lot of money if we cancel, and are open to postponing. I've been holding to change the dates for the week because I'm just worried we are going to have to do it all over again. And I'm going to go ahead and let somebody else kind of take this question, lob it over to whoever would like to jump in.
I can start. First of all, I'll just kind of say that with everything going on, that we kind of know as much as everyone else does. And The hard part about postponing is that a lot of vendors and venues are really focusing on what the government regulations are. We know that's also unfair. Austin is definitely a destination wedding venue. So, when there's travel restrictions from New York or California and mandated quarantines, it's not so much about, what's going on here in Texas. It's the fact that your guests can't come. And based on experience, everyone has been really working in the bride and groom's favor. You just have to be prepared. You have to have a second backup. I would say my biggest advice for 2020 is to just be happy with a smaller guest count and don't let that be a surprise if you do have a 2020 wedding. But if it does have to go into next year, just really start reading your contracts, knowing that there could possibility be a rollover because of the years and a price increase. And, we're all doing the best that we can. We're working in your favor, and just kind of one of those situations we have to take day by day. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
I definitely have been working with clients to set deadlines within the planning, even more so focused on that guest list. So like Ashley was saying, I mean, even in normal planning, you might have a list A, list B, but really hone in on what are my top 50 guests and make a list A of that. And then kind of put everybody in this list B column, but also understand if you can send out, I don't know, everybody's in different points of planning, but if you are at a point where, okay, I know I have to postpone, send a postponement card and ask for everybody to email you or email their email address to you, and then begin kind of this guest list of emails so that you can almost have a quicker turnaround when you are responding to those guests. And if you have to postpone a second time, being it okay to kind of go this electronic route if paper invites did already go.
Yeah, and if I could just add a little tidbit of knowledge on actually like the postponing process. I've had a couple instances where the vendors that were already hired for a client of mine were providing a very black and white option for postponement, and there wasn't a lot of leniency. And something that has worked really well is just having the clients have a very candid conversation with those vendors and explaining their situation. A direct example of this is I have a client who's legitimately waited 10 years and saved money for 10 years so that her and her husband or fiance could have the dream wedding that they wanted. And they've dated for like 12 years. It's this whole like love story, and their wedding is just a very big part of their day. Their venue was chosen because the groom's mom was there and she's now no longer with us. And so it's just, there's a lot of emotion that's gone into their planning. And one of the vendors just at first wasn't really budging, but then once the whole story came out and there was communication of just details of why they wanted certain things and why it was important to them, quickly the vendors became a little bit more understanding and were able to cater specifically to that client. So I think a lot of times we want to be black and white because on the vendor side, it's easier to handle situations by quick postponements of like, these are your two options and let's move on to the next one. But I think it's also important to, if you do have a certain situation that you are running into, sometimes over communicating and just really making sure that your situation is communicated to the vendors can really help if there's something that you really need that you're not getting. And sometimes it's just comes from communicating effectively. So making sure that you're doing that with your vendors.
And piggybacking off of what Ashley said about the guest list being 50 is we don't really know going into the phases what's going to happen if it goes to 50 or less. But if it does go to 50 or less, don't forget there's your vendors. There's catering, a photographer, officiant. I don't know how well that will be enforced, but if it's at 10 or less, you've got the couple, you've got your officiant, your photographer. So that leaves, 4 guests, 6 guests. And for when you do your guest list too, if you're trying to break it down, maybe do different groups, like group A are all my out of town guests, group B are my work friends, and then maybe kind of have like a list of sending out invites. And then as you're getting RSVPs, maybe send out more invites. And that would be a good suggestion to have smaller guest count.
I have one more, we're just going to piggyback here. Based on that is there's also some etiquette that we're all kind of understandably throwing out the window. Where I don't think there's this is the time to be able to necessarily follow every single etiquette rule. And so I think let's honor the spirit of that rule. And if you do have to, let's say you've already sent out invites to 300 people expecting, 270 to show up. Well, obviously right now we're restricting guest counts. So what do you do to the people that you've already invited that you're kind of uninviting? And some of that is if they're out of town, provide another option. If you are postponing into a year that they can go, like if you are postponing into 2021 when we expect guest counts may be allowed higher, great, then say that. But if you aren't, having a change of plans card that goes out and then separating out your invite list to say these are all going to get live stream invites, these are all going to get physical invites, and then there's going to be that crossover of once we get an RSVP from that first list, then we have this much room. But normally you have the wiggle room of the people that aren't going to show up to kind of not go past your guest count max at that venue or your budget max, and you kind of have an A list and a B list that are a little bit more flexible. So if somebody on the A list says no and then changes their mind, then you can still accommodate them. And with guest count maxes, you're going to be a lot more rigid on what you can do. And so making sure that people know, hey, if you RSVP no, we're going to give your seat away. And that's not traditional etiquette. But I think everybody going into this wants to celebrate with you, wants to be part of your wedding, is excited to be invited in whatever way they can. And just take that and let them love you and kind of just be really good at the communication portion. And that may be, we're going to email out and do cards, but we're going to email all the people who are going to do the live stream and say, hey, if we have extra spots, we will definitely be adding them, but we definitely don't want you to feel left out. Here is this other option. And so just make sure that you are considering kind of how those guests are going to feel. They were going to come, now they're not allowed to come, what that shift looks like. Maybe send them, maybe call them. Maybe those kinds of personal touches really go a long way when people who aren't in the midst of planning and don't know all of the ins and outs of this and have just been paying attention to the fact that their kids can't go to school right now. They're stressed out too. Really just kind of love them back a little bit, and that will help alleviate some of those relationships on the other side of this.
And keeping in mind those vendors and those hard due dates of that final guest count, I think it's going to save you the most money if you can communicate with those vendors at these deadline points, and each contract will point you to that deadline.
So I'm going to go ahead and read off the next question, and then we'll check in on the live and possibly circle back. The next one was, we've already postponed. What can we do to support our vendors that have been so supportive and helpful in rescheduling? I've heard of leaving good reviews, but are there any other ideas? And we have had just an outpouring of love from our clients, and I'm going to get teary-eyed because thinking of some of the stuff that people have sent me, I just get random text messages from clients being like, hey, we're thinking about you. Hope you're having a great day. Oh my gosh, that means the world to me. We have gone through so many postponements and a few cancellations, and we're trying our absolute best to support our couples. So having that love just returned and that energy kind of directed back at us has really, really made a big difference. And it's literally a text message. So those kinds of things have meant the world. We've gotten some cards from our clients. So I'd love to hear any other kind of creative feedback beyond, of course, the reviews that mean the world, or just giving shout outs on social media. But those texts and cards to the couples that have been doing that for us have just been we are so amazingly thankful for those.
I think that is that there's no more true words than that. Getting a text message from a client that's like, how are you? What are you? And I'm like, my mom has even asked me that. That's so sweet. Appreciating it on that level. But two things that I want to say is it bride to bride, this whole platform, please shout your vendors out, let other brides know who's working with you, who you appreciate. You know, a lot of brides come in this group and search names, and if you had a really good experience with like moving your date, or if you just really have been pleased with working someone, like use, groups like this platform, and really just supporting local business. You see that Mother's Day is coming up, look at all of these florists. They've got flowers, get your mom some flowers, get your wife some flowers. A lot of the catering companies are doing to-go food. Planners are doing virtual packages, consulting, just any vendor that you can see they're making an extra effort to still connect with you and provide a service through all of this, just really supporting them in those times.
And I think the other thing that is hard right now that's not happening is people are really nervous to book. And I know I have some clients that are gung-ho ready to go and want to book all their vendors for their wedding for either fall later this year or in 2021, but they're nervous. And I think that the best thing that you guys can do is, if you really do feel confident in moving forward with the structure that you have for your wedding, to try to continue to book vendors, because it's going to keep the entire industry going. And if everyone just stops booking and moving forward with their wedding, it's going to make it hard for us to keep operating as a industry. So when I've had clients approach me about wanting to move forward, I am encouraging them to move forward. I'm also encouraging them to book vendors that are on my preferred vendor list, so that way it's people I have relationships with that I know that I can help them with if there were to need to be a postponement for any reason, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So if you could just continue to try to move as much as you can financially with the booking of your vendors, I think that's super important. And I know it can be scary, but it can help keep the industry going.
I totally agree. I just want to say that, when it comes to where you are, like with your current vendors too, as hard as it is, we know we're all having financial troubles right now. A lot of vendors are doing, as a courtesy to their clients, moving their date, not charging a fee, or charging lesser of a fee if you continue to make your payments on time. That being said, we understand we can't expect anyone to, pay their final balance, for a wedding that's next month. But whatever, if, you can pay it, if it was already in your budget, you're ahead, like just remember that these vendors are out of a job, and we're, anticipating that income that's been taken away from us. So it's really nice if you remain on the same payment schedule. If for some reason you're having some type of financial hardship, really connecting with them and kind of coming into agreement with a new payment schedule. But I agree. I think that everybody needs to go forward booking their wedding as if this, if this isn't going on right now, because at this point, if it were to happen, the second wave that they're talking about, you don't want to risk people who already have a contract in place taking a date that you had your heart set on. So just still booking, trying to be optimistic, and just, really read your contract before you sign it, but just keep booking.
And even a partial payment, if your payment was due in full in April, I think it just warmed my heart that people were like, well, maybe I can just do half now and then half at the 30 days out. That blew me away. That was lovely.
Yeah, I even had a few clients reach out and pay like $200 towards their 2021 final balance. And they were like, here's $200. We just wanted to let you know that we're thankful for all that you're doing. And so, I mean, that blew my mind. But I thought that was really cool, because they're just a coordinating client, and I'm not talking to them a lot, but I just heard from them randomly, and they saw all the stuff that I was doing. And I thought that was really cool. So that's another really like fun way. You would make a vendor's day if you did that right now. So that was another, kind of same as Ashley.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about that. So, what are other options? Jennifer on Facebook asks, she wants us to talk about the possibility of, of keeping a payment schedule. So, talk about what are the options that you're seeing out there, because each of you are, not just seeing what you're doing and what your policies are, but you're also paying attention to what other vendors are doing, because you have a pulse on, the photographer and the florist and the DJ and the filmmaker and all that. So what are you seeing as options for what people are doing out there?
I'll jump in. I think we all have answers, but I mean, for us, we're seeing kind of a wide range of things. If you wanted to keep your payment schedule on the original date, some people are opting to have that transfer fee associated with that, so that you can still pay on your original, like with the new date. If you pay early, then some of them will waive that, and so we're really just seeing a lot of creativity kind of across the board. We are offering, if you're transferring into 2021, there is a fee associated with that. If you pay on your original due date with your original date, then we are working with people on that fee to kind of help keep the cash flow going. And we're seeing a lot of people do that. We're also seeing split balances. So 50% on your original due date, 50% on the new due date that was reflected with the new date. We're seeing new bookings offer percentage-based balances. So instead of like a much more traditional 50% down and 50%, a little bit later in the planning process, depending on the vendor, we're seeing, 20% down and then have regular payments throughout the engagement as kind of a way to get that cash flow a little bit more steady. So that's kind of what we're seeing. It's really varies depending on the vendor category. Florists versus DJs versus everything else really kind of has a different payment structure. Obviously, with catering and cake and things like that, you have to know your final guest count in order to solidify that final payment. And so theirs is even a little bit more complicated, just because you can't really pay that balance in full if you don't know what your guest count is. So having that kind of intermediate payment of, maybe it was 50% balance due at that final, with the final guest count, having some kind of interim payment to help take care of some of it with that flexibility, knowing that your guest count may vary just slightly, and kind of have that final balance with the new date. So we're seeing just a lot of different payment options.
And I also think that the important thing with that is knowing that each vendor is different. So everyone, we're providing a service. So right now, how much work have we done? We probably have done more work than your photographer, because your photographer maybe hasn't done engagement session or is going to just show up on the day of. So understand how much work your current vendor has put in, but also understanding catering comes with food, flowers comes, with a product. They have to place their order ahead of time. And so knowing that, there's more to it than that, and there's deadlines and things that they have to do. And I just think that people have to understand the level of service that, really goes into it, and that everyone is so different.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that people also can keep in mind from like the client perspective is communicate to what your ability is, right? Like everyone's at a different financial spot. Some people are still working, their job's still operating as normal. They're just at home, working at home, and financially nothing's really changed for them. So they're able to continue to pay. But as planners or vendors, we don't know like what your personal situation is. So if you can, the more forthcoming you can be with your financial situation so that you can work together with each vendor to figure out what works best for you as a partner, like partnership together, that's the best way that you can go about it. So, catering and floral and planning, like those are going to probably be higher bills versus, some other vendors. So figuring out, can you pay more towards some of the bigger contracts that you have, but still take care of everyone. If you can putting more, I think, effort back onto the client, but if you can kind of be strategic with what your budget is that you have to pay forth towards any of your vendors, and really communicate what your ability is, it can help them navigate a better payment schedule for you.
And yeah, no, like totally. Just because you're a photographer, they haven't shown up and done your wedding. They still have electricity bills. How are they going to edit other people's photos, So really, even though you haven't seen them, they have the most crucial role in your wedding. That's, your pictures are, going to last a lifetime. And then also going forward for booking into 2021, thinking about like all of us, we have some have employees. Cassie, there's just one Cassie, there's one Abby, there's one Ashley. So when booking your vendors, just know that securing your date, you want to really focus in on the companies where there's just one of us, as opposed to, someone like a catering company or a florist who can do, multiple weddings in one day.
I also want to say communication is the key in all of this. There is definitely, a time when we had to postpone inside of that 30-day window because everything was happening at rapid pace. We're not necessarily at that point now. If you are considering postponing and your wedding is in the next, 2 months or something like that, please communicate with your vendors. Try to let your florist know before they place with their wholesaler, that sort of thing, because they may not be able to get that money back. And then you're both in a hard spot. They have to charge you because they're out the hard cost, and you have to pay for it because they're out the hard cost. They can't go negative on your wedding. And so there's definitely kind of a time where we have a little bit more time. Yes, we are still learning day by day on what is happening. Oh my gosh, can we get some clarification, please? But beyond that, you can still communicate at this point and say, hey, our date is, the end of May, and we're thinking about this. And, they may be able to place their wholesaler order a little bit late if they know it's coming, but you have to talk to them. So please be in communication. If you have a planner, ask them to help. If you, especially if it's part of your package. If you don't have a planner, reach out to your vendors. If it needs to be a blast where all of your vendors are on blind copy so that they can respond to you directly and you're not blowing up everybody's inbox with everybody's replies, do that. Get the information out there, but communicate with your vendors because they're right now kind of wondering, is this wedding happening? And they don't know. They're going to behave as if it's happening because it's way more risky for them not to. If I'm a florist, I'm going to be ready to deliver because I certainly don't want to let anyone down. And so I'm going to be ready. I'm going to do all of that. But please, 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 if you know something's coming and it's 6 weeks away and you are saying, hey, my dad lives in New York and can't travel here, then you kind of see this coming and let people know so that they can prepare and maybe adjust their buying cycles to hopefully help mitigate some of those hard costs that you would be stuck with otherwise.
And really going off communication, like I would recommend if you are considering postponing and considering multiple dates to just get a Google document, put the dates that you're considering, and then put each category: catering, florist, planner, photographer, venue, and then just asking everyone to mark an X when they're available for that date, and just really doing it as early as you may know. That way you can see, you may not get all your vendors, but you can get 90%, but just being really proactive about it.
Awesome. I've got a question from the Facebook group. Callan asked, have any of you suggested to or have had inquiries for clients to get legally married on paper now and then have a reception later? And if so, how are you planning the ceremony aspect of the event that's going to happen later on?
We've definitely had that for couples who have things engraved or that date is very important to them. We had that happen in April and coming up on May 9th. And I think it's just per those government restrictions, what is allowed. There's one happening later this May that they actually get to use a piece of the property at the venue for the ceremony. And then they're going to go hopefully to a restaurant and finish out a small gathering for dinner, and then later just do a reception only at that venue. But what I think that venue did a second contract for the second date, and you in essence are doing a smaller contract for smaller hours in some cases, and then transferring or postponing the original contract for the full event. But again, I think it's different for each party.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. For the logistics kind of question of how to address the ceremony at the reception, there are a couple of different ways. One, there are several couples who are legally married on paper who do a full ceremony at their wedding, unbeknownst to all of their guests. So I think they would still be, even if they know, they will be excited to celebrate with you. You do you. The second option is possibly reading your vows, maybe as part of the toasts. So they get to participate in portions of it. It's still extremely intimate. It's still extremely powerful. But you're not necessarily staging a whole second site if you feel that that isn't true to what you want. But you can have kind of some of those elements brought in. You could video the ceremony and broadcast it at the reception that's happening later so that people can watch it. You could have photos on a display at that space. You can live stream it to your guests and say, hey, we can't wait to celebrate with you later when we, can be fewer than 6 feet apart. And so there's kind of a lot of different ways that you can incorporate those two. But if having a ceremony now and being legally married and then having a ceremony for show later makes you uncomfortable, then there are other ways to kind of tie that in.
Yeah, I have a client right now. She just got married last weekend and they did it in a church, which right now, starting today, churches are back and opening. So if you are doing a ceremony in a church, you have a greater option to be able to move forward with your ceremony. But they recorded it, started a Facebook group, invited their guests to the group, and then streamed it that way. And then they're going to be doing, the bride's actually really excited because she gets to wear her wedding dress twice. So she was like, how many brides get to wear their wedding dress twice? Like, I mean, very few. So they're going to do another ceremony on like the actual now postponed day of their wedding. But instead of doing the same exact ceremony, they're going to do basically what they're calling like a renewal of marriage. And they're going to, instead of saying like the traditional vows, they're going to say their own vows. So just renew their vows with each other a few months later. So, and they also, part of the reason why they wanted to get married now on the paper aspect, because there can be some benefits to, whether she was really needing to get on her fiance husband's, benefits and things like that from work. So that's why they made that decision too. So I think you have to look at what's important to you, what your needs are, what your financial capacity is, and what is most important to you. I think some people are really, when they're engaged, they're really focused on the marriage aspect and the ceremony aspect because that means a lot to them. And I think some people are really focused on the celebration aspect because they want to make sure that they can celebrate the big day with the people that really support their marriage and love them. And I think you just really need to decide, figure out what it is that's most important to you and allow that to be the way that you navigate.
Yeah, I was totally going to say that who doesn't want to wear their wedding dress twice or get a second outfit? You can get one dress for your smaller ceremony and then wear your actual dress on the day of. Good point. Look, Jordan out there, he can, video your wedding for you, your ceremony. You can, have it at your reception a lot. Say it again.
Oh, I just said that's right. We can.
A lot of people I know, honestly, they're still going to get married. I'd say 5 of my couples have already done it or they anticipate it. And just remember your wedding day is your wedding day in the future. If you don't want to do another ceremony, you don't have to. If you like dancing, forget the ceremony, just dance longer. You don't have to have a ceremony in the future just because it's a wedding. So just do whatever you're comfortable with and just look at it as a good way to eat more cake and celebrate with everyone else.
It's funny, before all this happened, we actually had a couple do a private ceremony with 20 guests, dinner with that same kind of family group, and then dancing, drinks, and the cake with 250. And so and that was before this. That was just how they wanted to celebrate with their family. And so I kind of view this as the same way. You can have that intimate ceremony and just pretend that there aren't 100 people watching on live stream. And then it still is that intimate feeling. And then you can really have that celebration with everybody and have that be a little bit later.
And it's all personal to you. We had a client who wore her rehearsal dinner dress to a really small, intimate ceremony at her home backyard. I think there were only 6 people. And they did that kind of secretive because they do want to come out and have the big show for the ceremony. So make it however you feel is you.
And that's a good way to support your vendors. You still get a bouquet from your florist. Get a to-go meal from your caterer, get a mini cake or some cupcakes from, your baker. It's a good way to, a date's a date. And at the end of the day, it's about your love. But, got to do what you got to do.
All right. Well, let's talk about this then. Jennifer on Facebook is wanting us to talk a little bit about reschedulation contracts, and as brides and grooms are planning rescheduling their full event, what does that look like, and what should they be paying attention for in a reschedulation contract moving forward?
I think we're looking at contracts in a way of making sure that any payments that have been paid are reflected on the new contract as shown in a new payment schedule. We definitely want the wording to be very specific on if we do postpone again, if cancellation does occur, what is that? Does that need to be a bigger conversation before signing? But making sure the client's protected, that the vendor's protected, and everybody is in a good place.
Yeah, and I think too, we're seeing at the beginning of all of this, when the postponement started happening for spring, that a lot of people were allowing and honoring, even if they had a change fee, they wouldn't charge it for weddings within 2020. But now a lot is already getting pushed into 2021. And so, looking out for contracts that have, if we were to have to postpone again, even into after 2021, what is then the change fee from that? And that's a lot. We just had to work with the venue on that 2 days ago on figuring out, is there going to be a change fee after the 2021? What does that look like? So reading change fees in contracts and figuring out what that is per the year, because that's pretty much what the industry is having to do now, is base it off of the year in which you're booking and rescheduling in. And then also looking at cancellations, because in spring of 2020, we've been canceling because we legally are not allowed to be together. But for fall, we don't know if there's going to be legal implications or if it's just going to be a situation where people don't feel comfortable attending weddings. And so are people going to want to postpone their wedding out of just the fear of not having everyone that they wanted to be at their wedding? And so there's going to, in my contract, there's two different situations. Like if you're canceling or postponing due to a government shutdown, that's one situation versus a situation where it's a choice. So you got to look at, is there stuff dependent on COVID specifically versus just in general? And are vendors, basing certain fees and payments based off of COVID specific implications from the government? And then I think the last thing is, specifically, this falls in line for planners, I think, more than any other vendor. But for planners, we have a package that we've put together with your original plan of wedding and your original wedding date. And for a lot of spring clients, we had already done all the work. And I have one that we're literally even going to a new venue and starting over from scratch. So I think that you need to be aware that original contract and that situation was based off of the work that was previously done. And there's going to be a new load of work that's going to be needed to be done with your planner. So being aware that a lot of these vendors we're already giving up a lot of, our time just to help you guys, but there's also going to be a need for new meetings and new venue walkthroughs and all of that. And so being aware and looking for what that implication is going to be for planners or any other vendors that are going to be like that.
I just wanted to say, just really to encourage people to lead with compassion. And when this happened in March, we didn't really anticipate that it would get to the level it did and that we would be in for the long haul. So something that you may have been told in March may not necessarily still apply to the second time it postpones or anything like that. So just remembering that everyone's doing the best that they can. When you're reading your contract, if there's a part that you don't understand, ask them to explain it a little better. If you need them, I don't know if everyone does this, maybe write in like a clause. Everybody's situation is so different. There's nothing specific. We don't know how long it'll last. And so just really leading with compassion when it comes to it. Like, we hurt just as bad as you do that. You can't have your wedding. Like, we do this for a living. Your wedding is so important to us that, like, we literally feel that we are also getting dumped by this pandemic. So just taking everyone's feelings into account.
And
Definitely.
I think in that contract, just understanding any minimums and what should be brought up ahead of time in conjunction with guest counts, and then double checking that those dates are reflected too, because I think that's an easy thing to miss.
Yeah, definitely double checking that dates are correct when people are transferring. You know, we've had 19 that have either moved, postponed, eloped, whatever their situation may be, and we have to physically be at the wedding. So when you're talking about florists, they're going to have 5 times as many, because they can do a lot of weddings on one day. They can do multiples in a weekend, and those generally aren't things we do. So definitely kind of keeping that in mind. And then there's also other kind of caveats, like if you're moving from a spring to a winter wedding, you're probably going to have updates on your design. Your flowers are going to change price if you still need the same flowers because they are no longer in season. So there's going to be kind of a lot of things like that come up. For us, when we're reviewing contracts for reschedules, we kind of have a few different what if scenarios, and we run that through their contract. And basically, I don't want to say we're trying to break it, but we're trying to understand the what ifs. What is going to happen here? So if this happens, this is how this is applied. If there is a government mandate, this is how this is applied. If there is just a transfer, this is how that's applied. And really kind of understanding. And then we ask and we go back and say, hey, DJ, if the mandate isn't in there, but we're still moving because of coronavirus, what does that look like? And really kind of having that move forward. And so really understanding those different what if situations will help you make sure that you're translating that correctly. And we send that back to vendors and say, okay, if this happens, we're interpreting your contract as doing this thing. Are we correct that there will be this specific fee? And double checking that to make sure that you're translating correctly. Our goal is that contracts should be easy to read, and they should be, great for the layperson to kind of walk through. I've read a lot of contracts. I've asked a lot of questions, and sometimes they interpret a little bit differently to the vendor who wrote them or the lawyer of that vendor who wrote them than me. And so just making sure that you're asking those what if questions so that you understand that contract and you aren't surprised when they are saying, oh, no. If you want to transfer because of coronavirus, it has to be because of government mandate. Well, that's not the way that I interpreted it. So just getting all of that out before you sign is so important.
And just be on the rapid lookout for changes. There's weird things like your flowers, again, like she said, this flower that you want, like that may not be harvested due to this, or like something weird now is going on with meat. I don't know. So like, be prepared. You have to change your menu, have fake flowers, really just focusing on the vendors aren't making these choices or decisions, because they're doing it because they have to. And we still have your best interest in this, and just, you got to roll with the punches at this point. We don't love it, but we're here to support you.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to make sure I said to any bride or groom that's engaged today is that it's really hard as humans, I think, when you have a set idea and concept of something, to change it. So for instance, a wedding, and you have your idea of how many people are supposed to be there and who those people are supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like in your design eye and the date and everything. And I think it's really hard that once you're not given that option, or it looks like it has to change, to compromise and to be okay with it. And I always preach this to my clients, but I wanted to say this today. Your wedding day is supposed to reflect you, your personality, your style, your favorites, anything that involves and just really contains who you are as a person. So if you feel like you're having to start over, you feel like it's not what you originally dreamed of your wedding day being, kind of go back to the drawing board and write out the things that are important to you and write out the things that make you you, and start trying to create a unique, different type of wedding. Maybe it's something about, Cassie just did a really cool drive-in wedding at a drive-in theater, and it blew my mind how creative that was. And it looked so cool. And she was even nervous about what it looked like because it wasn't the cutest place. And it looked adorable. And so, it's like anything goes at this point. And I've always said that tradition has really gone out the window in weddings in general anyway, especially in Austin. And if you're able to just bring in the cool, different things that you can do, like maybe you still want to have 100 people. There's a way to keep 100 people social distance and maybe serve them all ice cream because you love Amy's ice cream or whatever the situation is that you want to do. Like, don't let the disappointment of what you thought it was going to be shelter you and shade you from being able to be innovative with a different way to bring in your wedding and to still make it super unique and yours and special. And I think a lot of people are stuck in viewing it how they wanted it to be, and it's hard to step out of that and just kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit and get excited about something new and different that you could bring that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to do before. So I just wanted to share that and empower you guys. Like, we know that this is weird. We know that this stinks. This isn't something that really any other engaged couple has ever had to go through. And so you just got to kind of roll with the punches. And I don't like telling clients you're not going to get your dream wedding. It's not like a thing that I want to say to them. So instead it's like, what is the new dream? And what can we do to make it as perfect as we possibly can for you? And it may be better to completely start over than to try to just slowly change a little bit of what your main day was. And that's okay.
Yes, we plan based on values. And one of the things that we always go back to is, what is your why? So if you have a really specific kind of, hey, we really wanted this specific thing because of this, if you can figure out why you wanted that and why that was important, there may be a way to still achieve that goal with a completely different vision. And so, definitely, I mean, obviously drive-in isn't really what they had in mind. They were supposed to get married in a ballroom in a hotel. So, and so that was a complete shift, but for them, having that celebration was their why. And so for us, definitely kind of taking that step back, if that flower is important to you because of, this specific thing, get that one flower to be fake and get everything else to be real so that you can still have that meaningful. And then bonus, you get to keep the flower. And so there's a lot of ways that you can really kind of exercise that, but keeping in your values is so important on the why. The why is why you're getting married. The why is that you love that person. The why is that you're together and that you're getting married and that your family wants to be there, or your friends want to be there, or your work friends, or your whatever your tribe is, that's your why. And so identify that, plan with that in mind. And you may have something that turns out completely different than what you started with. But let's be real. When you get engaged, a lot of times your initial vision that you saw on some kind of blog is not what you end up with anyway, because budget or guest count, or it's not in this country, or fill in the blank. There's so many things that shift your planning anyway, because you identify with your why. This is no different. And I'm not saying that it's not hard. It is. I get it. And I'm here with you. But if you can kind of flip that narrative, then you won't spend quite as much time mourning what you can't have. And then you will flip and you will be excited about the planning that you can have. Because that's what I hear the most is we have lost the excitement of our planning, and we are, we still want to get married to each other, but we're sad. And so we're working with our couples to say, okay, well, what are you feeling like you're losing? Because you're mourning what you can't have. And okay, so let's identify that why, let's shift it, and let's get you excited again, because you're getting married. And that should be exciting and something to be celebrated, even if there are just a few less people there when you celebrate.
And let's be honest, we're going to be so excited when we can touch each other again or hug each other, or even if we have to wear a face mask on a dance floor. I may even be on a dance floor, not even working. I'm excited to eat cake again. I don't care if it's from, H-E-B, it's the best cake. I just want to look at a person in front of me that's not a computer screen. We are all going to be in such good moods that when we're all around each other again, even if it is at a safe distance, that you're going to have a more magical day. It's going to be so much better because everyone's just going to be so happy to just see a human body. So I think no matter what, just having knowing that, as a backup plan, it's still going to be the best day ever.
And the guests are going to have more fun. Like they're going to be so excited to be there with you sharing that. So when we do get back to business, what are some of the things y'all are doing? And I'll start. But when we do have a wedding and maybe it's 50 people or maybe these phases are doing well and we get to the hundreds, are there going to be things at the actual event to make people feel safer? Are we still going to wear masks? What do you think that looks like? Just to kind of share some scenarios. I feel like I'm probably going to wear a mask for a while. I don't feel like it would bother me if guests did, or bride and groom. I don't feel like they would need to, but sanitary stations are definitely going to be something I think about contributing to the event for my clients, talking to the catering teams and making sure that their hands are gloved and that we think through that service of food. What is being left out? What are people touching? How can we be proactive in a way in our planning that makes everybody, safe?
Yes, I think I wore a Harry Potter mask for the whole wedding that happened this week, so I am abundantly already tested that theory. And it works great. And we were really, really careful to observe social distancing, have a max number out of their cars, which was the rules that we were required to follow. And so, part of it is advising on those and making sure that we're up to date on the information. Part of that is adjusting food service styles. And those centralized points. So for your guest book, maybe you give away pens as your takeaway so that not everybody is using the same pen to sign your guest book. With buffets, having a server serve it so that you have one person interacting with those tongs and not 100. Family style, we're talking with one of our couples about having disposables that everybody gets to have at their own little place setting, and they are using their own things to get their stuff off of family style so that we aren't having that spoon touched by 8 different hands. And, like you said, sanitation stations, making sure that the ample bathrooms, maybe we have one that's just dedicated to hand washing so that people aren't having to, if they're single stalls, or kind of depends on the venue on that one. But like, there are so many ways to think outside the box. We have considered signage. This is more before the lockdown was in place on, hey, we'll save our hugs for another time, but we're glad to see you. And, things like that to kind of help remind people if we are still kind of in a social distancing thing, placing chairs in certain places so that they have that. Right now, we're working on launching an elopement package, and some of the considerations we're making right now are having the DJ set up 30 feet away with the broadcast so that they aren't in your group of 10 and things like that. We're still working on the logistics there, but like having those kind of conversations and understanding the ways that we can mitigate the number of the group that's together so that we can make those considerations and be safe.
And I don't know about you guys. You guys all have beautiful real hair, but my weave is very thankful that if we do a sparkler exit, if everybody stands 6 feet apart, that will be the saving grace of my year. I will social distance for a sparkler exit, and I will stand that should last. I think we all could agree with that one.
Awesome. Well, I want to make sure that everyone here has a chance to connect with brides, with people who are planning weddings here. So if each of you want to give a shout out to maybe your preferred social media, or if it's your website, or where you prefer for brides to connect with you. For me, it's ladybirdstudios.com, or probably our Instagram, which is just at ladybirdstudios. So let's go around the horn here and have the rest of you do this as well.
I could start with our APA. If anybody wants more information on all of the planners in the Austin area that are doing amazing work, that is just going to be our Instagram, which Cassie does an amazing job of with her team. And so you could just follow that at AWPA. For Mrs. Planner, our Insta is probably the best as well. And so that is MRS Planners. And follow along there.
So APA Instagram is APA Austin. So it's AWPAUSTIN. And then, so I'm Cassie with Bride's Best Friend. Our Instagram is BBF Austin. And, or you can find us at bridesbestfriend.me, or you can just Google us and help our SEO. But we would love to chat.
And I am Abby with ACH Events. So you can find ACH Events online on our website, achevents.com, and ACH Events on Instagram. And again, like Cassie, if you want to Google us, you can find us that way too.
And we are on Instagram at Ashley Nicole Affair. I have been redoing my website over the last few days because I'm just obviously so busy being unemployed. So maybe my website soon. And remember the Facebook group, Bride to Bride, that we're in. All of these lovely faces, a ton of other talented planners are also in this group. Vendors, use the search bar, shout people out, follow their Instagram, do everything you can. But, really just using any type of platform that we can all connect to. I think, going back to seeing people in real life, it's going to be so nice. But for now, we'll just support everyone on the internet.
Virtual hugs and share that love.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And if you want to see the replay, you can certainly do that here on the Facebook group. You can also do that on YouTube at the Austin Wedding Show on YouTube. And definitely check out that as well, because a couple of these planners have their own independent episodes. So if you want to see the pre-coronavirus version of the Austin Wedding Show, definitely go and check that out over there. And we'll see you online and see you in person one day.
Thank you, Jordan.
Can't wait to all share the same air with all of you guys. Thank you so much, Jordan, for doing this. Everyone go follow Ladybird Studios too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.